If you are a producer watching this video, be prepared to be offended. There is a story going around the internet, and Paul Third thought he would like to discuss it tonight. He's literally just mentioned it, and I've already got ideas flowing. But I also have counter-antithesis ideas as well, Paul. Welcome back to the Working Audio Tools podcast, the home of all things mixing, where we touch on mastering and we touch on production. And last week we were touching on my new home studio build, which is going ahead very well so far. I've not built anything, but I've made some good video content. So I've done some good research, and it's looking like it's measuring, I wouldn't say well, because it's a rectangle room, but it's measuring better than the rectangle room I'm in, and I'm already happy with that. So, Paul, you've got something controversial to say.
Yes, as always. Somebody left a comment last week, and it was along the lines of mixing is overrated. Now, this is something that I have been seeing very much in the producer field. Well, I said I was because I genuinely don't watch anywhere near as much YouTube as I used to. To be fair, it wasn't too much of a surprise because I remember seeing a video of somebody that was trending, and it was basically like a guy in an untreated room, a producer, talking about how overrated mixing is, and it was quite controversial. And I think Weaver had done like commentary videos about it and stuff. And then that made a lot of other producer YouTubers talk about, you don't need mixing engineers. Why are we paying mixing engineers? It's so expensive and blah, blah, blah. We could do it ourselves.
Was Weaver in support, or was he nailing this guy?
I didn't watch it. I just know that he discussed it in the video. I think I seen it in the thumbnail. So I don't know what he said about it. But yeah, I just thought I'd make a good episode because obviously we're aspiring to be full-time mix engineers, and we've been at the craft for a very, 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 very long time, and we're at the point where we're like, right, even talking about going into business together. So yeah, mixing, is it overrated? Ed, I'll leave the floor for you first.
I agree with the producer, because if he's doing his job right, we wouldn't have one.
True.
However, I'm half joking when I say that, but I'm half kind of acknowledging his point. The antithesis of that is where we are when we're trying to create mixes that are so balanced and controlled when it comes to mastering. We're aiming for a transfer. However, it's that separate third-party set of ears that is so valuable. A producer, it's also like, okay, there's a fairly big dose of ignorance there, in my opinion, in that producers aren't, in my experience, people I've spoken to, they're not going to the extent, they're not rabbit-holing room acoustics and mix translation to the extent that we are and mix engineers are. So they're going to be used to listening to their beats and productions on their system, which may flukily be right and translate really well. It may work, it may not. But by delivering it to a mix engineer, you're sending it to someone who hopefully has spent the hours and the days and the years rabbit-holing mix translation and understands how to take every mix to work on every or as many different sound systems. And a producer's going to be too busy working with clients, with artists, producing. They're not going to be thinking, like we did at mine when we heard a couple of songs on my new Anchor soundbar that just brutally highlights every little indiscrepancy. Yep. I now need to go back into mixers and be like, well, I need to check on this because this is brutally highlighting any flaws. A producer's not going to do that, are they?
No, I think you've raised a very good point that when you say that a producer is working with the artist, right? If you're working on a song from the start, and especially if you are the artist, then you can fall into the trap that nearly 95% of producers and artists fall into, which is demo-itis.
Losing perspective.
Demo-itis is a very, very common thing. Spike Stent talked about it a lot when he did a lecture. I can't remember where it was. I think it was like Manchester or something. And he was talking a lot about why people go to him. And he'll talk about Ed Sheeran and other people and other production houses, and he'll talk about how they give him the song that they think is finished. And it's his job to listen to it and try and hear the things that they won't hear because they're too attached to it. The thing is, with artists and producers, their main job is to get the song, right? To give you the song and be like, that's the song. There's the instruments. There's the music. There's the progression of the song as it builds and it flows and it blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. Our job is to sit there and go, macro, right, the vocal's too loud. there's a resonance in that that's actually like not going to translate well here. The low end's not translating right in the car. The low end's got too much sustain in it. You've got a bit of sibilance here, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. Our job, as Ed said, is to take that with a macro and micro view, because again, if you go too micro, then you lose the macro. So our job is to have the macro and the micro, and then to make the technical adjustments needed to make the song 5% better, sometimes maybe even 10% better, but also to make it translate to other systems, which is what so many producers and artists don't have. They'll normally have, in most cases I see, a pair of Yamaha HS7s or 5s that translate terribly, a pair of Adam TV 5s that translate terribly, or a pair of KRK Rockets which translate terribly.
Or DT 770s.
Don't get started. But you know what I mean, right? It's a thing where, like, most producers don't understand. Okay, I have to be careful because a lot of producers out there that are mixing and mastering engineers, right? But you know who we're talking about, right? We're not aiming this at you. There are people that produce, mix and master, right? We're not aiming at you. You know who we're aiming at. The people that say, yeah, you don't need professional mixing engineers.
I suspect we're aiming at a very small... Actually, it may not be that small. A small minority of YouTubers, content influencers. However, what they're probably doing is appealing to a rather large audience of producers who are now feeling empowered that they can do it themselves. And that's great. I'm a believer that they can do it themselves if they're prepared to study mixing. But there's a beautiful irony here, which I hope isn't lost on anyone, because what is a producer's role? It is to take an artist's song that they are fundamentally attached to and to say, be selective about which parts to leave in, cut unnecessary parts out, help with the arrangement and help with the sonics. How many times have we worked with a band or in a band in the past where the guitarist has sent you 17 guitar tracks and they're attached to every single one of them? Yeah. And either the mix is a disaster and you've subtly deleted things and no one's noticed, or the producer's come in and said, right, actually, you're having those 2 guitar parts and you're having one in the chorus, pick one. And the band's like, oh, and then all of a sudden the arrangement sounds massive and sounds so much better because, as we know, less is more. That's what a producer's doing. What a mix engineer's doing to the producer is saying, okay, great, love that sound, that's overbearing, that's a clash, but I'm going to fix it for you. I'm going to keep all your parts in place that you've meticulously worked on, and I'm going to make them work for you. Because what you've sent me, or what you've sent to mastering, has problems. Just as the mastering engineer is going to take my stereo file and say, actually, you've not quite got, you're a dB out here on this frequency, or you could get it a little bit louder, or you need a bit more compression for some energy in the chorus. They're going to fix that. Everyone, I think, relies on each other. And I don't think what I don't like is this, it's them and us mentality. It's like, if we all work on this together, everything will be amazing.
100%, yeah. 100%. And I think that that's the most important thing to take from this whole kind of discussion, is that it's a team game. I think what's happening is that genuinely the people that are making these videos are tight arses, okay? I'm a tight arse, I get it. But when it comes to doing something right, I'm a stickler at doing something right, which is why I've invested all the money and the time into room acoustics and mixing on headphones and all the things that are a rabbit hole. I just think that a part of this comes from maybe a bit of YouTube making things feel that it's too easy.
Sensationalism as well. It's clickbaity, isn't it?
Of course it is. All of these tutorials saying this mix trick and that mix trick, and you can do this and that and that. And many people seeing clips of mix with the masters and being like, yeah, I just did that, and that. The oversaturation of mixing and mastering content has dumbed down the industry. Well, not the industry, sorry, the audio community, because so many of them people are not in the industry. They kind of dumbed down the audio community to the point where they don't really even understand what mixing actually is. And I think that's so sad, because when we were growing up, when me and Ed were younger, you'd look at, guys like, TLA, CLA, Brower, Jack Joseph Puig, Bob Clearmountain, and, all the greats. And you'd see this mastery. You wouldn't sit there and go, yeah, what they're doing's overrated. Because you'd hear their mixes, especially Bob Clearmountain, who we say all the time has somehow managed to transcend technology. You listen to people like that and you go, it might be simple what they're doing, but the only way that they're able to make it look simple is one, experience, sometimes 10, 20 years experience, sometimes more, monitoring that they trust and good monitoring at that. I don't want to say gear, but again, if you look at the guys like CLA, obviously you'd have to say, gear comes into a part of that. But at the end of the day, if you watch CLA, I've said it many times, I've mixed with the masters, and you watch him work the faders and with automation, he's very masterful at automation. He's got a very, very good ear. And again, what many people forget is that your mixers like Manny Marroquin and stuff like that, they've got like 30 odd years, Serbin and Spike, they've got so many years experience of delivering what the sound should be today, tomorrow, previous. In the 90s, Spike had to deliver a sound. In the 90s, and really ever since the 90s, Serbin's had to deliver, what a pop sound should be. And that's what people are missing. That's what I find funny with the Discord. But again, people on my Discord are great. A lot of producers are in there, and they'll put mixes up. And, they'll be like, oh, how do you think it translates? And I'll be like, okay, that's maybe not right. You're overdoing this. Why are you doing that? Because I've seen this on a YouTube tutorial, blah, 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 blah. But again, they ask opinions from guys like me and Emra and other mixers because they know that there's experience there, and they know that we have a system that we can trust. And, that's one of the main reasons why so many people have ditched Bayer Dynamic, have ditched KRKs and Yamahas, and they've moved on to more expensive monitoring and, treated their rooms and actually sat there and thought, right, what should a professional pop mix sound like today, and how do I achieve that? Not like going on YouTube, actually physically mixing and trying to get their translation, to work outside of the studio. There's so many, many, many different facets of, what makes, mixing like not pointless and not overrated. But I find it interesting how that seems to be the modern wave of producers and artists. And again, I get it, money's tight, economic climate is not getting any easier. But it's almost like they're looking at guys like me, Ed, and other people and like, fucking hell, £300 for a mix. Look at all the amount of work I've had to put in to get it to this point. And all you're going to do is stick a few EQs on it, move a few faders, and do a little few wee tricks and put a bit of clipping and limiting on it, and that put it out. Yeah, if that's what it needs, that's what it needs. But I can guarantee you that a professional mixer will be able to get it to translate better than you can. And that's the reason why you go to a mixing engineer.
I think, sadly, this is possibly, on a negative side, indicative of the devaluation of the industry.
I agree, yeah.
And that comes from people who don't respect or value the art forms.
Yeah.
And if you're saying you don't need a mix engineer or you don't need it mastered, all right, maybe you're genuinely going for that raw, organic demo in the room, garage band, not the software, being in a band and, you know what I mean, in a garage kind of sound. Cool. But if you're going down that road, if you're spouting negativity towards other professionals, one, I find that quite disrespectful. I don't think that's smart. But two, it's possibly more indicative of their ignorance in terms of, okay, it's easy to learn a little, and we've all been there. I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast, and we all know Paul and I have been there big time.
Yeah,
where you get to a point where you think, oh, I'm quite good at this. And then all of a sudden, you realise you get to the top of that first peak on the Dunning-Kruger curve, and you realise, oh, I know nothing. And you have to go down, be very humbled, and then be very schooled for a long, 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 long time. And that curve keeps on going. That doesn't stop as far as I'm aware. So maybe they're just at the top of the first curve and they think, I can mix. And, there's no... maybe it's simply an innocent lack of awareness of the rest of the other stages in the process, or it's innocent ignorance potentially, or it's something a bit more calculated. But I think it's if it's calculated, it's for clickbait and it's for rage bait, and there's a market for that on YouTube. Fine, don't necessarily buy into it, but it's there. I understand why it's there. But if you're a producer and you want to be taken seriously, you can't be spouting off that mix engineers aren't required. It'd be like I was saying, mastering engineers overrated, they're all pathetic. Like, why would you be that ignorant?
Yeah, totally.
By choice. Yeah. And dismissive and rude about other people and just disrespecting the art and fellow professionals. don't really get it.
I think the main reason, Ed, is genuinely due to education. I just think that there's a lack of education with audio now where, people, the modern way is many people are lazy and they want a quick fix, and it's easier to assume that mixing is overrated because then you don't need to worry about it. You can just do it yourself. Like I've got a guy local to me who's away to finish a uni course, and he's at this point now where he's like, Paul, I just don't feel confident in my mixes. I just don't think I just keep on sitting there thinking it's not going to get better. Mix to mix, I've not got the consistency that I want. And then I got him to upgrade to the MTM Precisions like what I've got because they were going for half price. He got MTM Precisions for $1,000 for a pair. That's a fucking damn good price. Very good price. And straight away he's like, oh mate, Paul, like my mix is just Jesus, like with the speakers and the correction and the placement that you told us to do it. Wow, it's like I'm hearing my mixes like night and day. He was on KRK Rockets in an untreated room. He's like, Paul, wow, I just didn't realise just what I wasn't hearing. And I went, right, okay, see, all you need to do now is take 6 to 8 months of just mixing every single week with that setup. And I said to him, we'll get you set up with a headphone setup as well. And I went, look, if you have a consistent setup, over time, it'll start making sense. And every mix that you do will start getting that consistency. And I think consistency is the thing that I know that many of these producers just don't have, because getting consistency and average translation is the thing that me and Ed are still fighting at every single mix. We're getting better at it. I'd say maybe, as a percentage, Ed, would you say that with all the time and effort and patience that we've put into learning the craft, especially more in the past 3 years, what would you say as a percentage of our consistency level is, average translation wise? 70, 80, 60%? What would you say?
The Working Audio Tools podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at DistroKid for all of your musical distribution needs. Don't forget, you can't just upload your songs to Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, or Tidal. You have to go through a music distribution service. There are many out there, but DistroKid is the one that Paul and myself use. They don't take any of your royalties. You keep 100% of the streaming revenue that you earn. For just $1.92 a month or $22.99 a year, you can upload unlimited songs. Your lyrics can be found in Google and other places. You get the blue Spotify verified checkmark, and you can create royalty splits between yourselves and fellow contributors. You also get access to the new DistroKid iPhone app for editing and uploading songs and accessing your statistics on the move. There are plenty of other tools available on DistroKid. We'll go through those in another section. In terms of if we did a mix now, how confident we would be that it would translate
from mix to mix to mix to mix, our consistency, mix to mix quality wise.
Well, I was really confident until I heard that fucking Anchor soundbar 3. That's just
ruined you.
If anyone wants another set of speakers to test mixers on that customers might be listening to it on, Anchor Soundcore 3, it's about £45 on Amazon. It'll highlight timing discrepancies, the most minute tuning discrepancies. Well, maybe not so minute in my case when I'm singing, but any kind of frequency things, over limiting, over compression. It's brutal. Get one of those. So before I'd heard one of those, I would say up at, I'm going to say 90%.
Okay.
I'm pretty confident, like the top 3 tracks on my website would translate to 90% of the systems. But you can't quantify it, because you can't go out and hear every single system.
But even if we think about the revisions, for example, if you say like mix to mix, now think about the way that we used to be on the podcast, if we use our past experiences, and 1 week it'd be like, Paul's nailed it, Ed's been off the mark. And then next week it'd be, whoa, Paul's completely fucking Wembley Stadiumed it, and Ed's absolutely spot on. Those level of inconsistencies that, is what we class as, amateur mixing. Those are the things that are in the past for us, where we've got to a point now when we do mix comparisons, we know yous are bored because it's to a point where we know that there's less things to critique in our mixes now. Because, look, we are at a consistent level without kind of, blowing my trumpet too much. We are at quite a consistent level where every mix that we do, we're quite happy that they would be able to be released. And they're kind of radio ready. Yeah, there's subjective taste that goes in there, but every mix that me and Ed do now, we are very confident that we would get them over the line for every artist that we work with. And, they would be release ready and they would translate pretty well. They wouldn't translate as well as Spike or Serban and Mane and blah, 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 blah. But again, that's because we don't have 15, 20 years of doing this, full-time, industry, quality.
And that really is what separates those guys from everyone else. Translation is, it's kind of an intangible and slightly boring subject in theory, but it is, I think, one of the things that separates the greats from everyone else, because it is so hard to come up with an average of every single system possible. And the remarkable thing is a lot of these guys are doing it on 1 or 2 sets of speakers and maybe a set or 2 of headphones.
Yep.
I'm still, by my own admission, in a phase where I'm listening on 4 sets of speakers,
Sim.
my phone, my Apple AirPods, and 2 sets of headphones, if not another 1 or 2 on top of that. Maybe that'll change with experience. Maybe that'll change with the new studio. Maybe I'll just be like, I can do all this on the Angry Boxes. Get the low end right as well on them.
Get the sub and you're sorted out. Yeah, I think that we are in a very good place, Ed, that comes from, experience, and as we've always said, like learning from our mistakes and being okay to make mistakes. I think that many of the people that are making these claims that mixes are overrated, I think are coming from a place of probably most likely insecurity, and, they want to believe, as I said earlier, that mixing is overrated, because if it's overrated, then they don't need to worry as much and they don't need to put in as much hard work, because I think it can be very overwhelming, when you look at the amount of investment that you have to put in, especially if you're mixing on speakers, to do this at a professional level, mixing on headphones, understanding all the things about, amps and DACs, well, not as much DACs, but amps and, headphones and different headphones and distortion levels and, fucking even just like what is the correct image in a headphone, what is the correct sim stage, correct transients, even you get that in speakers. There's some people that, for example, wouldn't be too fond of the keys, because some people feel that the keys have a transient response that doesn't really translate that well to maybe poorer systems, where somebody like me, I sit and listen to it and I'm like, sounds perfect to all my headphone mixes. There's so many levels of subjectivity, but it's those experiences of sitting in rooms and listening to so many, many different monitoring. And I know that many people making these claims that mixing is overrated you're probably lucky if they've heard maximum of probably £1,000 pair of speakers in an average treated room. Most of them have probably maybe only heard 2 pairs of speakers and 2 pairs of headphones.
I was going to say, probably less than 3 sets of speakers and 2 sets of headphones.
Yeah.
It's fine to have an opinion. Everyone's got them. That's fine. But if it's coming from a defensive place, a dismissive place of, I don't need to worry about that because they don't understand it and can't be bothered doing the work to get good at it, I think that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah.
But only that person can be honest with themselves about that. I think we have to have, I started mastering because I wanted a better perspective and understanding of mixing and how what I did affected the next person in the chain. I've always thought about that since doing live sound, and I very quickly changed how I played drums because I realised what I was hearing, what other drummers were doing that was making my job difficult the other side of the desk. I then stopped doing that as a drummer, and I think became a better musician for it. So if you have as many, I've always said this, if you have as many different perspectives on your job coming from both sides, so as a mix engineer, it comes from not even just the production, you need to go further back to the writing and arranging of the song. If the arrangement's crap, doesn't matter what you mix, it's going to sound boring, it's not going to move.
Yeah.
You're struggling to create contrast and dynamics. Correct. If it's the same 4 chords on the same guitar all the way through the track. We've all mixed tracks like that. So if you have an understanding of everything, you can be better at what you do. But if you just choose to dismiss stuff because you can't be bothered learning the process, or, money's dictating your creativity, or you're choosing not to be educated, that doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't, no. And I think, there is an argument that many people will say, again, if the productions and the recordings are amazing, the songs mix themselves, Yeah, to a certain degree, but there are still, critical listening. There is still very tastings. There's still like subjective moves that, mixers make. It's the reason why people go to them. If you even think about, again, we've talked about it before, about, when Manny Marroquin mixed Stronger by Kanye West, the amount of mixes that they went through, and they got to the point where I think it was he listened
was
to...
it 100 or something?
Yeah, something like that.
And they went back to number 2.
Yep. And it was all because, I think the thing that really twigged it for them was when Kanye was in the club, and I can't remember who else it was, and they heard it in the club, and then Stronger came on after it, and Kanye was like, why does this not sound as good as that track? This song is like banging, it's such a big track. Why is it not sounding as big as it did in the studio? And then again, that's when they went through the whole thing about getting a mixer involved. Because back in those days, if you listen to, watch, there's a mix with the Masters. I can't remember the 2 engineers, but they did a song with Jay-Z and Kanye. And you couldn't have really, they would loosely call them mix engineers. It was just like transient designers and Pultecs, and they had a very limited knowledge of what mixing was. And they just made it sound like how they thought it should sound on KRKs.
Was that the WorkingAudioTools duo, mixing on Studio One?
Yeah, no. But yeah, they genuinely mixed and released this big record that was released everywhere. It's still a huge record. And they did it in a hotel room on a pair of KRKs. But when you watch them, you could hear like they were limited in what they understood. And then if you think about that, was what a lot of people in those genres were doing. And then, you got your star engineers like, your Serbins, and especially again like Manny in the instance with Kanye West. The reason that they had to choose somebody like Manny was because he understood sonically, technically, and emotionally how to get things to translate, not just in the studio, but to the outside world. And I think there's many things that many producers don't understand, how like they believe, or artists, I'll say, I've got to be careful when I say producers, because there's so many talented producers out there, but they're also mix and mastering engineers as well, aren't they? They respect the craft and aren't the people that are saying stuff like this. But I think what I've found for me is when I get a lot of mixes in from producers, I can hear the things that they don't really not understand, but they don't really hear.
Consider.
So consider. No, I wouldn't even say consider. I'd say hear. So I'd say like a big thing I notice with a lot of roughs that I'll get is that they're all very forward, because that seems to be, it's easier to make a forward sounding mix than to make a front to back mix, to have like the right level of depth and width and separation. And that's the reason why many people go to me, is because they're like, Paul, you achieve this great separation, your vocals are always up front in the mix, and you always have a nice front to back. And, for ages, me and Ed, like, were mixing very forward for a long time. And many people were commenting, right, everything's up front, where's the front and back? Where's the light and shade? And over time, we were like, okay, I hear what they're talking about now. Yes, and we listened to our old mixes back, and we're like, wow, they're so overly forward. Everything's at you, fighting for your attention. And now me and Ed, once we heard what real depth was, what real separation was, what real dynamicism was, over time we tuned our ears, mostly our brains, to know what a professional sound is to us. And I think these are the things that people don't consider, because you can't mix what you can't hear. If you don't have a system that's showing you proper depth front to back, that's not showing you correct low end, you're listening to everything's distorted and your room's not calibrated, you're just hearing a mess, and you can't really make sense of what you're hearing. And that's why you come to people like mix engineers who invest in acoustics, who invest in monitoring, who invest in finding the right monitoring for them so they can translate better to the outside world. I think what annoys me, Ed, is that YouTube has almost kind of made mixing into this, like it's a book of tricks, almost like we're like these little magicians that but there is no such thing as magic, so we're just like these kind of book of tricks, when actually isn't. Like, mixing can be relatively simple, but as I said, the only reason that mixing and mastering can look simple from the outside is because of the experience, and because of the ears, and because of the ear training, and because of the experience. There's times like we've met people who've been in the room with Bob Clearmountain, and they're like, yeah, he didn't really do much, but what he did do was he knew what to touch and what to leave alone. And things like that are what, like, many, like, novice producers and what many artists won't understand. We've all been there, you know, and you have a track and it's like, I have to put 5 plugins on everything. It's not enough, put more in. And then my 2-bus, I need to have 16 plugins on my 2-bus. I need to have a limiter sandwich and it's like stacked like that. And I need to hit -5 and I don't know how to do it, but I'm just going to go into Pro L2 and smash the shit out of it. You know, it's like, these are all the things that many people think mixing are. And then you get to the point like us where, again, and it frustrates people, I get it. Emra did, I think on the Discord for many people, where he showed people a mix he was working on. I think it was like an hour of his time. He didn't do much. It was like 68 tracks or something. Didn't use any compression. Mostly all fader moves and distortion moves. Again, didn't do much. A little bit of EQ here and there. Showed that you could get a really good mix without doing too much. But again, without his experience and without his setup, his monitoring setup, and without his training, he wouldn't be able to make the moves, you know, the simple moves that he did. That's what's missing. That's what's missing.
And I think there's an element of humbleness required as well. Like, I wouldn't work with a producer, which I have done recently. I've worked with Bobby, who we had on the podcast, who had the song on the Kardashians show. Worked with him on one of my tracks. And he did a whole bunch of stuff that I would have never thought of doing. Some things I loved, some things I didn't like. And we worked on the track until we were both happy with it. And the result is far better than it would have been if I'd have done that on my own.
Yeah.
Working with people, I am learning more and more as I get older. Working with people is far more beneficial than trying to do everything on your own. I think it's good to learn everything on your own. So if there are producers who are striving to be great mix engineers and then great mastering engineers, fantastic.
Yep.
But you can always learn something from somebody. Do not ever be so arrogant to think you can't learn something off everyone.
Yeah.
Even someone who picked up Pro Tools last week is going to know a key command that you don't know. I guarantee it.
Yep.
So working with people, be humble. It's better.
Yeah, and even just to get things loud, Ed, it's like the amount of people that don't understand how to get things loud, and that's why we had to learn kind of a lot about mastering to be able to almost master our own mixes whilst we're mixing.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like, my mixes are masters. Like, I want them to be transfers. Like, the mix I did for Marv last week, that was, I was V2. I nearly got the V1, but I put Autopan on a sitar and he didn't like it. And I would have had the V1. But either way, it was a V2, right? And we think about, like, a year ago, I would not have got that V2. There's no way. I would be in like version 8, version 10, maybe got to the point where it wasn't working at all and he ditched it. But, you know, the reason that Marv goes to me and Ed is because he wants a different perspective. He's a mixer, I know, in his own right, and he does mixes as well, and he'll give us rough mixes and stuff. But he respects the skills and the experience that we have, and what we offer is a different perspective. As Ed said, it's like collaboration is so important. There's a reason why if I'm struggling with a mix and I've maybe just lost my perception on it, I'll send it to Ed, I'll send it to Emra, I'll send it to somebody else. I might even put it on the Discord just to get lots of little like different representations of it to just know how the mix is sitting. And sometimes that is so important, as I mentioned with Spike Stent earlier. Like, again, you could sit there and say that Ed Sheeran, for example, could learn how to mix and he'd just mix and master himself. But obviously what Spike does is he's able to take the vision that he's got and just make it sound like a hit, make it sound like a pop hit, and just make it translate to radio. So when Ed goes to any venue, any gig, any stadium, any hotel bar, his song comes on, which it undoubtedly will, and he'll sit there and go, yeah, that's how the mix sounds. And that is something that many people underestimate, the difficulty of doing it. Many big engineers that we know have talked to us so many times about it. We've talked about it on the podcast, about they've done mixes that they're like, yeah, great, perfect translation, got accepted. And then they've been in like a fucking hotel in Dubai and be like, oh my God, what is that? Where's that resonance came from? Like, what's the story there? And some of them have went back and fixed it. Some of them have went, c'est la vie. But the next time that's in their head. Like, mixing engineers, are the ones that we know, are always striving for perfect translation. It's something that doesn't exist, right? There is no such thing as a perfect translation because tastes are different, human beings are different in their own subjectivity. So having a different perspective is just so unbelievably important. and knowing that you have somebody that you can trust. I mean, many mixers talk about mastering engineers that way, where like there's a reason why we will never, ever, ever say that mastering is overrated, because that second check, that experienced last final little tick is so important, where you might maybe done like an 8-hour mix, right? It was a difficult mix, and you're like, yes, translating everybody else. A mastering engineer with a fresh pair of ears might just go, know what? Maybe that little dip in here, and maybe just that tiny little compression in the low end there, and those tiny little 1% to 2% things, sends it back, and you're like, I didn't think I could have got that mix better. How did you manage that? Experience, ears, training, allow people to just work their magic on your mix. Like, don't be so like constricted and be like, no, it's got to sit here and you can't be touched. That's not how the industry works. That's how the music industry has never worked that way. That's why you have guys like, that's why bands get people like Rick Rubin, and you know, that's why there's so many producers. That's why there's fucking sometimes 15 songwriters on a song these days. You know what I mean? It's like most pop things that you see now, like could be Sabrina Carpenter, could be Olivia Rodrigo. Fucking hell,
that's an episode for when we get Rick Beato on, which
yeah, I know.
I'm not confirming or denying is happening, by the way. We've never spoken to him, but
I love it. No,
at some point we'll try and get him on.
Not even attempted.
The Working Audio Tools podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at DistroKid for all of your musical distribution needs. For a little bit more, $39.99 a month, you can have 2 artists on your roster, which includes everything just mentioned. Additionally, synced lyrics in Apple Music, further streaming analytics statistics. You can create a customizable record name. Mine, for example, is Ed Thorne Rhythm and Records. And you can customize release dates, pre-order dates, iTunes pricing, and again, much more. Now, if you're an artist manager or a record label, the Ultimate Bundle gives you up to 100 artists for just $89.99 a year. And you get 1 terabyte of instant file sharing, which is useful, but also contact information for thousands of playlist curators on Spotify. This is really useful so you can pitch your artist music to playlist curators around the world, only available in the Ultimate Bundle from DistroKid.
Know what, Ed, right? Let's try a little bit of objectivity here. Let's actually try and do the opposite. Are there any things about mixing that are overrated? Where are the points for you, Ed, that you could maybe, you know, turn the other cheek and say, yeah, if I was to think that mixing was overrated, are there points? Is there anything that we could, from an objective standpoint, are there points where, yeah, there's maybe stuff that we've missed?
I'm wondering if we can get another episode out of this.
No. I think it's pretty difficult, though, because, look, we've just spent this entire episode telling you exactly why it is important to have a mixing engineer, because it is a skill, and it's a trained and learned skill. I think pricing, okay, I think, yeah, maybe you could argue that some mixers could be arguably a little bit overrated for what they charge. But, you know, I think
it comes down to self-respect and value. If you respect what you do, if you value your time, value the effort that you've put into a project, value how much you've studied something or practiced something to get good at it, whether it be an instrument to record, songwriting, producing, mixing. If you value it, you will put a price on it at some point. If you don't value it, fine. But the people who don't value stuff are most likely not conscientious at what they do, and therefore aren't ever going to get good at it anyway.
Yeah, I know.
There's got to be a correlation between that. If you care about what you do and you're serious about it, okay, budgeting and economics aside, you will value what you do, and you will want what you do to be as good as possible. And you will, at some point, realize the merits of working with other people who know things you don't, have ears and skills that you don't, to make things better. If not, then maybe you need to be a little bit more humble. Therapy, Paul. Therapy's the answer to everything.
I know. That's the answer to everything on the WorkingAudioTools podcast now. But yeah, I think maybe I'd say the only thing I could think of would maybe be price. But again, that is subjective. And again, I think it's quite... people could maybe have a point and say, because we do know some big mixers that will get 2, 3, 4, sometimes $5,000 a mix. But again, you're paying for experience. You're paying for a guaranteed end result that, has got their name on it. And sometimes, like having, this track was mixed by Serban Guinea and mastered at blah, 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 sometimes can hold a bit of weight and maybe can sometimes get you in the right places. There's different reasons why people cost so much. Yeah, would I pay $5,000 for a mix? Fuck no. No way if I was an artist. But at the end of the day, most of these artists have the labels paying for it, and they're all fucking working together to make everything work. But I just think that a budget has to come into it. I do agree, and I know some people may feel a bit hard done by, when they're sitting there saying, I've spent, maybe 2 weeks producing this track from start to finish, doing all the recording, blah de blah de blah de blah. And you genuinely expect me to give you £300 for maybe 4 hours work, for you just to send me it in fucking 4 or 5 hours and be like, there you go, job done. Yeah, because it's a skill and you need paid for your time. Some mixes take 4 hours, some mixes take 8 hours, some mixes take a couple of days. Depends on the mix, depends how good the translation is, depends if there's something that is, you kind of get right, you need a couple of days at it. There's peaks and troughs into it. And I think that's another bit that annoys me, Ed, is that I don't think people understand valuing people's time. It's like the world these days seems to be like, they find it strange that it's like, what you charge per hour, what you're like, £25 an hour? Really? I'm like, really? Because there's people out there fucking doing photography lessons fucking charging £60 an hour. Really? There's other people charging fucking £100 an hour. People cost what they cost and people charge based on their skill set. Yeah, I get it. You can go on Fiverr and, you can get like a mix done from somebody in India for like fucking 75 quid or something, and it's going to be really high quality. But that shouldn't mean that somebody like me and Ed or somebody else that charges £300 a mix and master, is like, that we're overly expensive and we're overrated for charging what we charge. It just is what it is. We live in a different part of the world. The economy is much, I was going to say the economy is much tougher here. It's tougher fucking everywhere, but £300 here is £300 here, and there's a minimum wage for a reason. And yeah, I think you're right, Ed. I think there's a lot of ignorance in there, and I think many people that say that don't really fully understand what they're actually saying. When they say mixing is overrated, I think, to me, that's an indication that they don't actually understand what mixing is. Because would you ever see me and Ed ever sit there and say, nah, producers are overrated? Would we say that producers are overrated? We know producers. We know the amount of work that goes in. Again, we've produced on tracks. That's what I'm doing in the studio. I get artists coming in and they're in the demo phase, and I've got to work with them to then try and make something and be like, right, maybe try this guitar, maybe try this part, maybe change the tempo. All of these ideas to get that artist to the finish line. It's so important. Maybe many people feel that from an outside view, a producer does way much more work, and maybe they feel underpaid for that because it's more of a creative outlet for them. And many people are working on their own songs, and they're like, I've put fucking 180 hours into this, and you're just going to do this for fucking 4 hours. Fucking overrated. It just is what it is, Ed. It's no our fault that what we could do at our skill set is something that could be done. Here's a good example for you. Here's how I'll end, right? To kind of put it in perspective, because me and my dad talk about this all the time, because I am tight. I'm a tight Scotsman. My dad pays £40 for a chiropractor, and my dad is genuinely in there. My dad's like, Paul, you're lucky if I'm in there 5 minutes. She goes, click, clack, clack, little pop of the neck, bump, bump. There you go, Mr. Third. And he's like, 5 minutes, 40 quid. That's not even an hour's work. And he's like, they just look at me and go, who else is going to do it? And see, as soon as he said that to me, we both laughed, and I was like, you're totally right. He's like, Paul, I could try. It's like, I could try to do it myself. I could try to get you to do it. But guess what? My body would be,
neck, so.
Yeah, my body would be in bits and you'd probably kill us. And it's the same thing for anything else. You pay for a skill set. Regardless if it takes 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 hours, 2 weeks. You pay people for
Yeah.
their skill.
And I think that's a shame that that's not been respected, really. But that's like my first comment, that it's contributing to the devaluation of the industry. It's it's on every level. It's every musician who's accepting gigs that were paying the same 20 years ago. That's on you. People don't value you more. People haven't valued what you've done in line with inflation. That's on you for accepting all those crap paid gigs and not changing it and not standing
100%.
up to it. It's on me. I've done it. I'm not guilt-free of this. If you value what you do, you will charge accordingly and you will find your audience. I'm always a believer you'll find your audience. When I was doing live sound, I started doing live sound gigs for £200. I then realised it was a ball ache and that wasn't very good value for money for me.
Yep.
It was for them. But I was learning on the job as well, so it was kind of even. So as I got better and got better gear, I charged more money, and you lose some clients, and there's painful thresholds when you lose some, but you gain others who are willing to pay and value your service, and it keeps going up. There'll be natural ceilings, and eventually I did hit what I thought was the localized industry ceiling, and did a couple of years at that, and then got out of it. But we know what the ceiling is on mixing. We're just probably in the UK now. It's probably $5 or $6 grand a track if you spike stunt.
Yeah.
Don't quote us on that, but from numbers we hear from people, it's probably about there. There's probably a ceiling below that at $2.5 grand a track. There's a ceiling below that at a £1,500 a track. And we know people who are on these levels.
Yeah.
Then £1,000 a track, and then probably £500 a track, and then from there. So I believe if you're good enough and you want it enough and you value yourself, you will gravitate up that scale. But you've got to believe in it, and that's the hard part, I think.
And that is the best way to end, right? At the end of the day, we should value people's skill sets, okay? I get it, right? Me and Ed might even, again, there's people like Emre Çelik, for example, that could get a mix done in an hour. And he charges a lot more than me and Ed. But, his skill set is worth the value. His end result is worth all the time that he's put in.
It shouldn't be about the hourly rate. It should be about what's the result.
Yeah, the end result is all that matters, and we genuinely do believe that by investing in a mix engineer, a good mix engineer obviously, somebody that's put in the time and the effort and skill set and the investment, to get the right translation, that you will get a better result. They will be able to take what you've got and get that vision and make it translate even better, to the point where you listen to that and you go, yes, that is what I had in my head. Thank you so much. The amount of times me and him have done mixes and, they've had the vision in their head, they've given us like little nuggets to go on, we've got the rough, and we've just went with what we think is what they've got in their head. They come back and they're like, wow, thank you so much. I just knew what I wanted, but I just didn't have the skill set to be able to produce what I wanted.
Or even comments like, I wouldn't have thought of doing that, but I really like it.
Correct, yeah.
I mean, that can go either way. That could be like, I wouldn't have thought of doing that because I wouldn't do that. I don't like it.
Like my sitar, like my Autopan sitar. Marv was like, get it off. But
That's fine.
but that is what it is, right? Please do not devalue people's skill set. Producers, mixed engineers, recording engineers, any profession that requires, years of learning, please don't devalue that, because it's really frustrating when you put in as much time and as much investment as me, Ed, and other people have to be able to do this at a set standard, and we're still always trying to get better. It's really, really devaluing to hear somebody just having a quick glance being like, yeah, it's overrated, when for a fact they don't understand the amount of learning that goes into just being able to be the level that we're at.
Do you know what? It's a shame, but it doesn't bother me, because let them do it. Let them be in that pool of like-minded thinking people. That's fine.
Yep.
I thought that was going to be a short episode, and here we are, 49 minutes in.
I noticed we could have wrapped this up 20 minutes ago, so
I think
sorry.
we peaked at half an hour.
I thought I could eke it out a bit, so I eked it out a little bit. I like my watch time. I like my watch time.
Next week, we have Nicholas from Panorama Mixing and Mastering coming on the show, and we have some interesting news and announcements.
Yes.
And developments behind the scenes regarding that, which is exciting. So that'll be, no doubt, be a fascinating interview. If you've not seen Nick's channel, Panorama Mixing and Mastering, Nick thinks in a way no one else in the industry I've met does.
Yeah.
It's very analytical, very mathematical, very methodical. Paul, I'd say, is, he's been accused of being scientific. Nick is very mathematical with his approach, I think, and there's a place for it, and you're guaranteed to learn something from him in the next episode.
Always. Yep, always. Look forward to it.
Stay tuned, subscribe, share, comment, like, leave a review on whatever platforms you can. That really helps the podcast out, and we will see you on the next one. Oh yeah, it's been emotional.
Oh yeah, bye-bye.